You are listening to the Occultus Eye podcast, a journey into the occult and otherworldly, with your infernal host, Remy Blackheart.
Good midnight to you, and welcome to the Occultus Eye podcast. In tonight's episode, episode 2, Intro to Satanism and Infernal Overview, we lift the black veil on one of the world's most controversial and misunderstood religions, Satanism. So thank you for tuning in and enjoy the show.
Don't be afraid. This is not a recruitment film for Satanism. You're either a real Satanist, a true Satanist, or not. And if you are born that way.
Satan has been the best friend the church has ever had, as he has kept it in business all these years. A quote from former high priest, founder of the Church of Satan, Dr. Anton Szandor LaVey. Before his death in 1997, LaVey had spent 31 years, and to this day continues to influence generations to live a vital existence, shedding conformity and mindless acceptance of oppressive religious dogma for a religion based on man's own carnal needs. On April 30th, 1966, Anton had founded Satanism as a religion with the belief that life is the great indulgence, death is the great abstinence, using Satan, the adversary, the opposer, not as a metaphysical entity for worship, but instead as an ideology to emancipate one's own consciousness from outdated religious moral brainwashing. In 1969, Anton proceeded to publish his satanic philosophies, known infamously as the Satanic Bible. Here in his own words, LaVey explains his thought process.
Well, it occurred to me for many, many years that there was a large gray area between psychiatry and religion that was untapped, and no religion had ever been based on man's carnal needs or his fleshly pursuits. All religions are based on abstinence rather than indulgence, and all religions, therefore, have to be based on fear. Well, we don't feel that fear is necessary to base a religion on. The fact that religions for thousands of years have been telling people what they should do and what they shouldn't do according to the basic whims of a person who might be running the show is very understandable. We're realists, we Satanists, but we also feel that a person has to be good to themselves before they can be good to other people. So we feel the greatest sin of all is self-deceit. This is a very selfish religion. We believe in greed, we believe in selfishness, we believe in all of the lustful thoughts that motivate man, because this is man's natural feeling. This is based on what man naturally would do.
The idea of bettering oneself by selfishness may leave some feeling apprehensive, unable to accept its rational qualities. For far too long, the term selfish has carried a stigma. One has to ask himself, why? Why is taking care of yourself before others considered bad? How can you help others if you cannot help yourself? However, this does not mean to imply never do anything for anyone else. Unequivocally, if you do something for someone you care about, that you deem worth your time, the joy it brings to you and that person will bring its own sense of gratification. Feeling guilty for being selfish? Let the doctor explain.
We feel guilt is a necessary thing, not necessary that it's practiced at all times, but we're stuck with it. We have it in our collective unconscious. We have a certain amount of feeling of apprehension for things we've done because we're taught from childhood not to do certain things. Any attempt to sort of scrape the psyche clean is only going to make us much more, and certainly much more fraught with frustrations and tensions. So what we've done is just reverse the procedure. Instead of trying to free ourselves, we've taken all these hang-ups, we've turned them into useful situations. If you're going to be a sinner, be the best sinner on the block. If you're going to do something that's naughty, do it. And realize that you're doing something naughty and enjoy it.
To indulge in sins is advocated by Satanism because these sins lead to physical, mental, and emotional gratification. To repress one's need to indulge will only lead to severe frustration and compulsive behavior. Isn't it better to have control of your desires instead of desires controlling you? Sins also have a natural, conducive function in our lives. Don't agree? To quote LaVey, a Satanist knows there is nothing wrong with being greedy, as it means that you want more than you already have, and that envy and greed are motivating forces of ambition, and without ambition, very little of any importance would be accomplished. Think about it. If you overeat, does pride not step in, motivating you to better your image and self-respect? Reluctancy to get out of bed for work or commitments? This is the sin of sloth. Stay in bed long enough, and you might find yourself committing the sin of lust. There is nothing inherently sacred to a Satanist about moral codes. They are constructs of man, and what man creates, he can also destroy. So what then are the codes of conduct for a Satanist? What are a Satanist's do's and don'ts, if any? After the break, I will present to you an overview of the 9 satanic statements, the 9 satanic sins, and the 11 satanic rules of Earth.
Now, for centuries, both churchmen and laymen have been defining the devil according to their needs, all the while playing the game of muzzling the enemy. They've been inventing the rules of how devils should behave, how Satanists should behave, how devil worshippers should act. And they have been in an authoritative position to do this, because naturally, they are the men of God, they are the men of the church. Supposedly, they are the men who've been doing battle with this devil and been absolving their parishioners of these devil's promptings. In this manner have they maintained a convenient means by which to escape the blame for their inadequacies or indiscretions. The devil made me do it has long been a stock alibi. Once it held very firm. Now, fortunately for us, it has become ludicrous to say the devil made me do it. Yet many, while laughing, still play the old game of self-deceit and blame the devil in one way or another. So the old game is still going on. This is made amply clear in, of all places, the very world of the occult. Witches, who held the devil's name for centuries, now refute Satanism with a passion, employing it as the other side of the fence, which they are most certainly not. All manner of occultists, from ESP researchers to faith healers, denounce Satanists as worthless, meaningless, dangerous, ad nauseum. But never is there to be found a positive adjective about Satanists. We Satanists only smile at such transparencies because they are transparent opinions. Their motivations are most clear. It shows that even those who now claim emancipation from inquisitors need devils themselves in order to make their art more palatable to others. Ironically, the masters of the world have always been Satanists. The masters of magic have always practiced satanic magic. That is to say, magic without the trappings of self-deceit, because self-deceit is always an inhibiting factor in the ultimate success of a magical rite.
Welcome back First up, I will be reading the 9 satanic statements, which are essentially the satanic belief system, some of which we have covered tonight, and some of which I will cover in detail in future episodes. So let's begin. 1. Satan represents indulgence instead of abstinence. 2. Satan represents vital existence instead of spiritual pipe dreams. 3. Satan represents undefiled wisdom instead of hypocritical self-deceit. 4. Satan represents kindness to those who deserve it instead of love wasted on ingrates. 5. Satan represents vengeance instead of turning the other cheek. 6. Satan represents responsibility to the responsible instead of concern for psychic vampires. 7. Satan represents man as just another animal, sometimes better, more often worse than those that walk on all fours, who because of his divine spiritual and intellectual development has become the most vicious animal of all. 8. Satan represents all of the so-called sins, as they all lead to physical, mental, or emotional gratification. 9. Satan has been the best friend the church has ever had, as he has kept it in business all these years. Next up, I will be reading the 9 satanic sins, verbatim, as published by Anton Szandor LaVey. Unlike Christian sins, satanic sins do not come natural, and Satanists believe that we are intelligent enough to superintend them in our own lives. So let's begin. 1. Stupidity. The top of the list for satanic sins. The cardinal sin of Satanism. It's too bad that stupidity isn't painful. Ignorance is one thing, but our society thrives increasingly on stupidity. It depends on people going along with whatever they are told. The media promotes a cultivated stupidity as a posture that is not only acceptable, but laudable. Satanists must learn to see through the tricks and cannot afford to be stupid. 2. Pretentiousness. Empty posturing can be most irritating and isn't applying the cardinal rules of lesser magic. On equal footing with stupidity for what keeps the money in circulation these days, everyone's made to feel like a big shot, whether they can come up with the goods or not. 3. Solipsism can be very dangerous for Satanists, projecting your reactions, responses, and sensibilities onto someone who is probably far less attuned than you are. It is the mistake of expecting people to give you the same consideration, courtesy, and respect that you naturally give them. They won't. Instead, Satanists must strive to apply the dictum of do unto others as they do unto you. It's work for most of us and requires constant vigilance, lest you slip into a comfortable illusion of everyone being like you. As has been said, certain utopias would be ideal in a nation of philosophers, but unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, from a Machiavellian standpoint, we are far from that point. 4. Self-deceit. It's in the 9 satanic statements, but deserves to be repeated here. Another cardinal sin. We must not pay homage to any of the sacred cows presented to us, including the roles we are expected to play ourselves. The only time self-deceit should be entered into is when it's fun and with awareness. But then, it's not self-deceit. 5. Herd conformity. That's obvious from a satanic stance. It's all right to conform to a person's wishes if it ultimately benefits you. But only fools follow along with the herd, letting an impersonal entity dictate to you. The key is to choose a master wisely, instead of being enslaved by the whims of the many. 6. Lack of perspective. Again, this one can lead to a lot of pain for a Satanist. You must never lose sight of who and what you are, and what a threat you can be by your very existence. We are making history right now, every day. Always keep the wider historical and social picture in mind. That is an important key to both lesser and greater magic. See the patterns and fit things together as you want the pieces to fall into place. Do not be swayed by herd constraints. Know that you are working on another level entirely from the rest of the world. 7. Forgetfulness of past orthodoxies. Be aware that this is one of the keys to brainwashing people into accepting something new and different, when in reality, it's something that was once widely accepted, but is now presented in a new package. We are expected to rave about the genius of the creator and forget the original. This makes for a disposable society. 8. Counterproductive pride. The first word is important. Pride is great up to the point you begin to throw out the baby with the bathwater. The rule of Satanism is, if it works for you, great. When it stops working for you, when you've painted yourself into a corner and the only way out is to say, I'm sorry, I wish we could compromise somehow, then do it. 9. Lack of aesthetics. This is the physical application of the balance factor. Aesthetics is important in lesser magic and should be cultivated. It is obvious that no one can collect any money off of classical standards of beauty and form most of the time, so they are discouraged in a consumer society. But an eye for beauty, for balance, is an essential satanic tool and must be applied for greatest magical effectiveness. It's not what's supposed to be pleasing, it's what is. Aesthetics is a personal thing, reflective of one's own nature, but there are universally pleasing and harmonious configurations that should not be denied. Lastly, I will share with you the 11 satanic rules of the earth, or as I like to call them, satanic etiquette. Let's begin. 1. Do not give opinions or advice unless you are asked. 2. Do not tell your troubles to others unless you are sure they want to hear them. 3. When in another's lair, show him respect, or else do not go there. 4. If a guest in your lair annoys you, treat him cruelly and without mercy. 5. Do not make sexual advances unless you are given the mating signal. 6. Do not take that which does not belong to you, unless it is a burden to the other person and he cries out to be relieved. 7. Acknowledge the power of magic if you have employed it successfully to obtain your desires. If you deny the power of magic after having called upon it with success, you will lose all you have obtained. 8. Do not complain about anything to which you need not subject yourself. 9. Do not harm little children. 10. Do not kill non-human animals unless you are attacked or for your food. 11. When walking in open territory, bother no one. If someone bothers you, ask him to stop. If he does not stop, destroy him. This concludes this week's episode of the Occultus Eye podcast. In future installments, we will go into great detail and have constructive conversations about satanic ideology. Hopefully tonight's episode challenged your perception and made you question theistic religion's biggest lie. As always, share your thoughts with the show on all social media platforms at OEPodcast666 or email us at oepodcast666@gmail.com. Tune in next week as we further explore the Black Flame. Thank you for listening, and hail Satan.
Satan is to us a symbol rather than an anthropomorphic being, although many members of the Church of Satan who are mystically inclined would prefer to think of Satan in a very real anthropomorphic way. Of course, we do not discourage this because we realize that to many individuals, a picture, a well-wrought picture of their mentor or their tutelary divinity is very important for them to conceptualize ritualistically. However, Satan symbolically is the teacher, the informer of the whys and the wherefores of the world. And in answer to those who would label us devil worshippers or be very quick to assume us to be Satan worshippers, I must say that Satan demands study, not worship, in its truest symbology. We do not grovel, we do not get down on our knees, genuflect, and worship Satan. We do not plead, we do not implore that Satan give us what we wish. We feel that anyone who is going to be blessed by any god of his choice is going to have to show that God that he is capable of taking care of the blessings that are received. The Church of Satan is an organization which is comprised of Satanists who, because of their abilities and lifestyles, and I must stress this, lifestyles, reflect a higher than average human potential. Through this avenue, the Church of Satan, the Satanist will become the prototype for a more rational, certainly more finely tuned society.